Welcome back to the blue stage, where hospitality remains at the heart of today's conversations. Get ready for this next session, which will offer a unique perspective on branding, diving into how three great brand houses in hospitality approach this vital topic. This session will be professionally led by Kirsten Veld-Turkis, Associate Partner at Profit Germany, experts in business transformation consulting. I'm truly looking forward to it, Kirsten. The stage is yours. Please introduce your speakers and panel.
Thanks very much, Caroline. And it's a great pleasure for me to be here today. And welcome. As you can see, the panel almost doesn't fit on the page here, with so many wonderful people joining us to discuss what's the rationale behind hotel brand diversification strategies, and also share, I want to say, strong POVs on multi-brand portfolios and the benefit for stakeholders. As a consultancy where brand portfolio strategies are one of our key areas that we work in Profit, I must say that we have accompanied many companies in different industries, from FMCG to automotive to hospitality, through brand journeys. And I personally think that with the constantly changing and getting even more fragmented consumer landscape, this is one of the most interesting topics of our time. So again, totally thrilled to be here today for this wonderful panel. Actually, I think, as I do, so does Thomas think that branding and hospitality is a very exciting topic. And I'd like to ask Thomas to the stage. He is not only Chief Marketing Officer of Room Price Genie, I think it says, right? Room Price Genie, where he's overseeing all the brand and marketing activities, but he's also associated with NIMA, the Dutch Institute of Marketing, as a qualified examiner for sales and marketing degrees. That's super. And in the fast, okay, here you go.
My colleagues.
Absolutely. So Thomas has in the past 15 years held various leadership roles in marketing and sales, both in the US and Europe, for companies ranging from hospitality to technology, so bridging the two. And he has also served before his current role as Senior Director of Global Partnerships and Technical Presales at Revenate, where he managed the partner network and the presales endeavors. Thomas will share his angle on hotel brands with us in a brief keynote. So,
thank you so much.
Happy to have you here. Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you. All right. So when we started this panel, I was asked to kind of give a short introduction to the topic of branding and kind of frame the discussion that we have later on with brand experts. And I found this topic, as Kirsten said, personally very interesting, and also from a professional marketing perspective. I'm interested in the topic. So let's start with branding, right? A brand is kind of school book definition, typically something, a product or service or an experience that is distinctive and different from anything else, with the purpose of making sure that you can set it apart from the competitors. And really the key elements in this are distinctive and different. Oh, the slides go a little too fast. But for today's discussion, when we talk about brand, we need to limit the scope a little bit. We can argue that the Ritz in Paris is a brand, right? As a hotel, it's very recognizable and famous. But for today's discussion, we want to talk about brands as a multi-property with many footprints around the globe or around the continent, to make this discussion a little bit more limited for the brands. And what I did a while ago, on like people do on a sunny or rainy Sunday afternoon, is I looked at all the brands from the largest hotel brands and chains around the world, and there's over 250, and I kind of mapped them on a timeline and said, hey, when did brands start, and how many brands have developed in what year, kind of the birth year of each brand. And the first brand that is still multi-property out there is the Taj, defined in 1903 till 2024, what we've mapped. And the first area, we kind of distinguished three areas in this, is what we call the classics. The classics are really the brands like Westin, the St. Regis, Howard Johnson, the Waldorf. This is with the area of kind of 1903 to 1930, when brands started to be more prevalent and more out there. The second area is the 1980s, and this is where you kind of see the first peak in hotel brand developments. You see both brand extensions, so Courtyard, but also, for example, Hampton by Hilton, but also the developments of things like Formula One or Ritz-Carlton. This is kind of the second area of branding. And then the last is where brands went kind of in overdrive, you could say. In the 1910s, the largest 5 hotel corporations added more than 35 brands to their portfolio. And you see both brand extensions. So, for example, you see Radisson, Radisson Blue, Radisson Red. You see also a lot of development of new brands, Moxie, Andaz, these type of brands. And as well, again, the branded house strategy that they use. For example, Canopy by Hilton, branded with the corporate name with an extension on that. And then I looked, hey, how are other industries actually approaching the topic of branding, right? I looked at other industries out there, and you see that hotels are adding and having quite a few more brands than many other typical conglomerates out there. Stellantis, the largest car manufacturer, has 12 brands. Only beers and wines have more brands to their portfolio. And the general trend that we see in many of these corporations is that many corporations are actually slashing their brands. There's very few corporations, slides automatically change, there's very few corporations that actually continue to add like hotels do. Many other go exactly the opposite direction. And as you saw, this is the Coca-Cola CEO. He is one of the leaders in this. When he joined Coca-Cola, after 2 years, he actually slashed over 200 brands within the Coca-Cola portfolio. And this is a trend we see in many other regions. Mark Ritson, probably the famous brand expert out there. He's always very famous for bragging about that he killed many brands out there and only created a few. And he's like very open about that companies should stop creating more brands. They should actually kill more brands because it's more profitable and better for companies in the long run. And then last, Scott Galloway also talks a lot about marketing, and he talks about the area of brand building being dead. I think that's a little exaggerated. There's many people that call TV dead and radio dead, so I think we're not there yet. But his point is brands are not as important in decisions anymore for consumers, right? And we see that as well in hotels. Multiple research show that both price, reviews, and location are kind of the leading indicators for people to make a decision on what hotel they actually choose. And brands come in various researches, like around 5 to 6% of those actually choose specifically on a brand. And you see this in other daily things we do as well. People are not loyal to a brand, they're loyal to their behavior. And I think the best example is the way you place chips in a supermarket. If you place them at eye level, you immediately start selling more versus at a lower level. And as you saw, Byron Sharp does a lot of research on this. He does a lot of research about consumer behavior as well. And he said, what we find is that consumers typically have a portfolio of brands they find acceptable or things that they think are acceptable when they purchase, and when the moment comes of making a purchase decision, they choose on the occasion or the availability. And if brands are that important for the hotel industry, we can also ask ourselves, say, why are none of these global brands are actually in the Interbrand top 500? Or they are in the 500, but not in the 100. None of these leading brands are actually making it in terms of brand value, of brand equity, to the top global brands out there. While there's a lot of name recognition, there's a lot of resources for these brands, they're not in there. And the last thing I looked at is like, hey, is branding important for the experience for a guest? So I looked at the top 25 cities around the world. I actually looked, hey, what is the #1 spot on TripAdvisor? Where do brands actually excel? And we see that the majority of the hotels around the world are non-branded when it comes to top #1 on TripAdvisor and guest satisfaction for that. All right, this hopefully gives you a little bit of a framing and an introduction in the topic of branding. And as we join by Kristen, who will introduce our panelists to this discussion furthermore. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Thomas. If you kindly take your seat, that's perfect. And yeah, let's bring all of the other panelists to the stage. And I'll start with Julie White, Chief Commercial Officer, Europe and North Africa for Accor's Premium, Mid-Scale and Economy Division. Welcome, Julie. Take a seat, whichever you want. That's perfect. Yeah, take this one if you like. Perfect. So Julie is, as I said, Chief Commercial Officer for the Europe North Africa region for Accor's Premium Mid-Scale and Economy Division, PME. We decided to spell that out. Julie has been in hospitality for a long time. She has joined Accor from Wyndham Hotels and Resorts, where she's had the position of Vice President Commercial for EMEA. I think a super interesting thing about Julie is she also has a background in consulting with PwC in M&A advisory, and she's had several global sales roles in the airline industry, including Virgin Airlines, British Airways, and American Airlines. Of course, Julie is passionate about all Accor's brands, but I learned that she's especially proud to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the iconic Ibis brand of Accor, which was the first hotel you ever stayed in when you were a student in Paris. So here comes where it all comes to close again. So again, welcome. Thanks for being here, Julie. And the next panelist is Dimitris Manikis. He is president and MD for the EMEA region of Wyndham Hotels and Resorts. And as you can imagine, these two know each other from, from their professional past. And Dimitris is not only a tenured hospitality executive, but he also contributes to building the future of hotellery. And I saw that when he was hugging some young men in the front here who are students at the The Hague Hotel School. So he is also an industry advisor member at the Hotel School The Hague, and a senior advisory board member of the Sustainable Hospitality Alliance. Thanks for being here with us, Dimitris, and very welcome. And finally, I'd like to welcome Nina Garrison from Hyatt. She's the Regional VP Brands and Marketing for EMEA at Hyatt. And she has actually just recently moved to Zurich, as I learned, and has come here from Zurich this morning. So welcome, Nina, to the panel. She's been with Hyatt for over 18 years, knows the company and its brands from various angles. She's looking at a diverse career, started in F&B at the Grand Hyatt in Chicago, I learned, where you could see how the interaction with guests actually works. And then you had the opportunity to make an impact across operations and commercial functions to up until recently serving as Director of Global Brands, where you were overseeing strategy and management of the independent collection brands and Hyatt's residential portfolio. And Nina has also been elected HSMAI Top 25 Extraordinary Minds in Marketing. Bravo. Okay, so thanks for joining us here today, and I'm going to move here. We have mics for everyone, which is perfect. So Thomas told us a little bit about where brands come from and how things have developed. I did a little bit of research, and there is currently over 6,000 brands, hotel brands in the world. And here on stage, we were actually supposed to have little brand panels here from everyone, but we have around about 100 brands on stage, with just the three of you here today across Concept. So we heard from Thomas about the classics and the 80s and how it all evolved. Julie, how have brand portfolios evolved over time, and when did the differentiation become so relevant? What was the driver for this?
It's a great question, and we have seen over the past 15 years within Accor, we have tripled the number of brands that we've had. So we currently now have 45 different brands across 5,700 different hotels, and in multiple markets across the world, over 120 markets. So we have seen that proliferation, and it has truly been driven by customer choice. So the customers have been telling us in the different markets that where we have our iconic brands, so our Ibis brand is 2,700 of those hotels, that is a brand we have developed at scale. And part of that. Then we have another series of brands that are iconic brands like Novotel, Mercure, Pullman, who have their legacy and a history with us. And then there's the development of other brands that have become part of our selections of different choices, of different options within what our customers are looking for. Because ultimately, what we recognize in our research, in our familiarity with our guests who stay with us through our loyalty programs, is that the guest is looking for a promise of an experience. And so our brands are just that. They are a promise of an experience that we deliver, and they want different experiences. And even the same guest who is a loyalty member with us and works and stays perhaps at an IBIS most regularly, we see genuine crossover, frequent crossover from all scales of our brands. So an IBIS Styles loyal member will also choose to stay for a different experience. Perhaps rather than their regular work travel, they'll stay for a romantic weekend at a Mercure in a lovely location in the Mediterranean, or they'll take their family on a different holiday at one of our move and pick resorts. So they stay across all of those depending on the experience they're looking for. Okay. And experiences now more than ever matter.
That covers a lot of the whole topic already. Thanks very much for that, Julie.
So we conclude after this.
Actually, a question to Nina at that point. There are, we heard about brands, and Thomas tried to give a bit of a definition of what is a brand. There's also hard brands and soft brands, and there's concepts, and there's the different segments. You mentioned some of them. There's budget, there's mid-scale, premium, luxury, lifestyle, business. I'm going to go on forever here. Leisure, extended stay, branded residences. I don't know if I'm missing anything, so question to you is, how would you, explain the structure at Hyatt for your brands and concepts and soft brands?
Sure, yeah. Well, and I think in order to understand our structure, I'll start a bit first with some key messages that we've recently shared. So if you look at Hyatt.com, we have 33 brands, but recently we announced a new brand opening, just last week actually. And before that, late last year, we announced our intention to structure our portfolio into 5 key portfolios: luxury, lifestyle, inclusive, classics, as you mentioned, and essentials. And more recently, we talked about our shift to a brand-led organization, which I think is critical, and we doubled down on this actually yesterday with the announcement of a new leader in Amy, who is a brand leader, not in the hospitality industry, but with luxury brands previously. And I think this is important because it's about how you treat the brands and how you engage with the guest. So if I had to narrow it down to a simplified statement, I would say it's about simplification in that we know broadly, as you mentioned earlier, that our guests, a luxury guest will interact with multiple luxury hotels or brands within our portfolio. So we know how to find them and where they find us as well. In addition, diversification is critical. So when you think about it through a brand-led perspective, we need to make sure that we create these swim lanes so that our hotels and our brands have a unique perspective that delivers to the consumer's needs. And lastly, increase penetration. So as we're looking at a new brand structure that supports the needs of these brands uniquely with the talent and the experiences and the tools that they need, we increase the satisfaction of the guest. We create consistent experiences that they are looking for, and hopefully we create profitability as well.
And maybe a question to Dimitris. Is there a segment where you would say that differentiation of brands and having a varied portfolio of brands is more important than in others?
Look, I mean, as you said, we are 100 brands right here. For Wyndham, the story is very simple. I remember when I was in South Africa, my Zulu colleagues taught me one basic lesson about life and business: be first, be fast, or be food. So you're either first, you're either fast, or you're going to be food. And just remind my kids and all my colleagues that that's the way to grow in business. And we had to, for us, our strategy was very simple. We have 25 brands, 20 we've actually bought, 4 we've actually created organically, and 1 we actually licensed. So we are a company that actually saw opportunities in the marketplace, and we went out and we bought those brands. Right? We bought brands that made sense. We bought brands that made sense for our customers. We bought brands that made sense for our shareholders, because remember, there are a lot of stakeholders in this relationship. Brands are not just about the customers. We're a Wall Street listed company. We have shareholders that we are account for as well. So it's not just we're going out and we have fun one day and we create another 10 brands. We have thousands and thousands of institutional and non-institutional shareholders to account for. So for us, brands are actually serving a purpose. So we have a theme in the United States of America where it says that every 10 minutes you can actually stay at a Wyndham. Because we have 6,500 hotels. We have Days Inn, Super 8, Ramadas, and Howard Johnson. Thank you. I'll pay you later for the classics. So we have all those brands that every 10 minutes, literally, you can stay at a Wyndham hotel. So for us to say that, it takes a lot of pride. I know that brands get do we need more brands? Do we have more brands? But I can tell you, you and whoever else is listening, that every single member of my team and every single member that works at Wyndham and every single member of 114 million members of Wyndham Rewards, they take a lot of pride of the brands they stay at.
Let me ask you another question. Is the business rationale behind increasing your brand portfolio is growth? You explained it's organic or inorganic depending on what's out in the market. Now that's serving, you said it's very much about the guest. It's also about the investors. It's about the hotel brands. We talked about brand value. I mean, there is a hypothesis that says in the end it's the investor that is the first stakeholder in this. What would be your take on this?
I think ultimately the EBITDA is driven by the revenue that is generated by the guest. And so ultimately the investor needs to position the brand that is going to have the best return on investment from the attraction of the right guests to the right location at the right price. Mm-hmm. And so ultimately it's the consumer that drives the brand equity that we develop, we invest in, we cultivate, and the hotels pull through to the delivery of the brand promise that we've made through our marketing and through our communications to the experience that gets delivered. That's where the profit is then generated in the repeat stays and then in the value of the ADRs and occupancy that you can generate. Without that, the investor doesn't have a business case to put that brand on that hotel.
There's a big disconnect. The biggest challenge we have with brands is if we disconnect from the consumer, the end user, right? Because for me, it's the end user who actually decides, has this brand any future? The guy from Coca-Cola, he actually took out 200 brands or whatever he took out because Cherry Cola was actually sitting on that supermarket forever. Have you ever tried Cherry Cola? Good luck.
There's a reason for that.
There's a reason for that you haven't tried. So what did he see? He went, or he sent his people to the supermarket, and he realized that nobody is actually buying Cherry Cola. So what would he do? He would keep on producing Cherry Cola? No, he took it out. The reason why we still have those brands is because there are some people out there that are actually using them. There are some people out there that they have a connection with that brand. I don't know, because somebody stays at a Days Inn in Alabama because his father used to stay there. And when they used to go on holidays, they used to stay at a motel in Alabama that called Days Inn or Howard Johnson. So there is a reason consumers decide what the future of the brand is. It's not us, it's not the consumers decide. If they're not happy with it.
But is there not another, if I may ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's not another reason. It's that because the asset or the building itself is owned and operated by an individual operator and owner. So in order to say, hey, we're not going to build any, if you're not going to be able to do any Days Inn or Howard Johnson's anymore, you need to reflag, is another, and where Coca-Cola has direct input on, I start producing, hotels are in a different position with different stakeholders, right?
No, true. I mean, if again, I don't want to monopolize this, but we have a saying in the US, 60% of our customers in the United States, actually not just ours, many of the hotel groups, they're actually Asian Americans, the Patel Motel Cartel, right? They're all Patels, they're all from Gujarat, and they are extremely successful.
Yes.
You don't mess around with those people because they know exactly what they're looking for. They know exactly why they've got those brands up there. They know exactly what to expect. And they are the backbone of the hospitality industry in North America.
Yes.
So for me, to convince that family that came from Gujarat to put one of our brands up there and stay with that brand, because retention of a brand is far more important than growth. Retention is far more important. It's not an easy task, and I can tell you because that's exactly what we do every day. So.
Can I ask that question still and then we're going to move to the guest perspective. From an investor's point of view, what are the key KPI that are interesting in a brand? What is it that's driving the interest from an investor perspective?
Me? I don't know. I mean, I can tell. Nina knows more, but hospital pass, it's called rugby. So
give some room to Julie.
Yeah. No. I'll tell you, the key thing for investors, right? What are they looking for? A, that you have a strategy. B, that you don't create brands for just creating, because we have a new brand manager who just had this brilliant idea. And remember, at the end of the day, there are four things that every consumer wants: a nice bed, comfortable shower, lights that work, air conditioning that stays at 22 and that you don't freeze to death, and a smiling receptionist or a smiling staff. No matter how many brands you build, how many spas, these are the 5. Since the Greeks, I have to say that, invented hospitality 5,000 years ago. Oh, no. I have to make that statement openly and publicly.
Okay.
Since the Greeks invented hospitality 5,000 years ago, that's what consumers are looking for when they go to a hotel. Everything else is a plus and it's beautiful, but these 5 elements are absolutely key for the future of our business.
The fundamentals.
Now, the key KPI for the investors, what would that be?
It's the return on the investment, right? So it's like any other type of investment. It's how they can build the return on investment over their ownership period. And that has to continue to provide returns over that extension. And investing in a property is a long-term investment. So they have to have the confidence that that brand is not going to just be a trend, that brand is not just going to meet the consumer for a short period of time, but that is going to be an over time investment that's going to continue. So that's one of the things when we work with our investment community and as we continue to work with our owners, we have to continue to invest in the brand equity. And that is not only about branding, is not just about marketing. That's where it starts, because that's the promise that you're making about a whole experience that you have designed throughout the entire customer journey. And so to work with the investment community, we have to keep our brands fresh. We have to keep the positioning relevant, and that includes new standard operating procedures, brand standards, training, education of the teams on property, as well as through the whole marketing and customer sale journey, so that brand experience that the investor has bought into is continuing to deliver for them.
Yeah, and maybe also because you talked about retention, Julie, a question to Nina. When we're looking at brand portfolio, and I say versus loyalty programs, or maybe in conjunction with loyalty programs, is there one driving the other, or are they inseparable? How do they go together with your brand portfolio?
I think they're inseparable. You can't have a really strong loyalty program and a weak or dispersed brand portfolio that really doesn't stand for anything, because you're not delivering to your loyal members opportunities to stay within and redeem with their points. And on the flip side, if you have a really strong brand portfolio, it's challenging, or you leave it, you don't capitalize on the opportunity to lean into that loyalty that those consumers that are passionate about that strong brand you've created, because you will have loyal members with a strong brand. And I think they're inseparable. And when you look at World of Hyatt in particular, we've had some incredible growth. And while we're not the biggest, with the biggest loyalty base compared to some of our competitors, what's interesting is if you look at it divided by the number of the 1,400 hotels, let's say, that Hyatt has worldwide, we have a really strong member-to-hotel ratio, which means that we're able to deliver more opportunities for our guests to stay at our hotels within our ecosystem, to use their points there. And this is an opportunity for us to engage with members that we know stay more, pay more and book direct something like 87% of the time. So this is critical. And I'll give you another example of where the synergy lies there. We've had immense growth. We're leading in the all-inclusive space, Hyatt is, with 150 hotels and something like 55,000 rooms. And so when we brought on this portfolio of all-inclusive stays, our loyal members love it. They are redeeming their hard-earned points that they worked so hard to earn in some of the other stays and experiences at our inclusive hotels. But what's amazing is last year, for example, we gained or enrolled 1 million more members just from those hotels alone. So I do think they're inseparable, and you have to have that strong connection.
And I can reflect on that from my time in the airline industry as well, is that we had a similar sort of experience with our loyalty members, that we saw they would have certain routes within our network, within American Airlines, British Airways. We had what we called our earn routes, that were the depth of where our guests, our customers, our travelers were earning their miles. But then we had routes that were actually more redemption than paid. And so routes to Hawaii, routes to the Caribbean, for example, those were the burn routes. And so you had to have both to complement, to build your loyalty network, to serve the multiple experiences that your travelers want to have. Where do they want to earn and where do they want to burn have to complement each other. So you need both within your portfolio.
Now, we've heard from all of you, you're all very convinced about your brand portfolios, and that's absolutely correct. And, you know, we
need to convince Thomas, I think. I mean, we are convinced. I think Thomas is the non-believer here.
Well, I mean, we're here to have it's a bit of a critical discussion too, in saying, you know, there's swim lanes. We talked about those and how important they are. And Nina, you mentioned that it's driving guest satisfaction to have those swim lanes, to be very clear towards your guests, towards your operators, and make sure that the guests have a very distinct experience. Now, if I'm a guest, when I'm a guest, I should probably say, you know, when I map out the different concepts of the different hotel brands, I get confused sometimes. So, you know, what is it that you do? And I'm asking you the question, Julie, is for me as a consumer, what is it that Accor does to make sure that I understand your brands and I know where to go in Accor? With, you know, everything that I see out there, and, you know, I'm thinking particular lifestyle concepts. That's, you know, that's what's happening at the moment, lifestyle concepts. How do I work my way through the complexity?
It's a great question, and it is around how we communicate about the brand and about, again, that promise and the experience that we are making that brand identity. And again, we have to refresh that as we go. A great example, and I'll start with the Ibis brand. So it's their 50th anniversary of the Ibis brand. The campaign that we have running on Ibis, you can say it both ways, is about go get it. The brand is really our strong eco brand. It's about that comfort, location, the consistency of the stay, and we know that it is not about the frills. It's an economy brand, intended very much for you to have a comfortable place to check in, drop your bags, go out there and get that experience that you're there for, whether that's a concert, whether that's a football match, whether that's a fun experience in the city with your girlfriends for a night out. That's the go get it message. That's the purpose. And so it's a great way of really bringing that identity to life. So then you go through to the other types of stays, and we have, again in our eco sector, a much smaller brand, much more boutique brand like Greet, which is one of our sustainable brands. And it's where we have the whole message around the sustainable build, and it brings in a different identity, a different kind of sense of purpose around people who are looking for that real eco experience and part of their travel choices. And all of the recycled materials that are built into the lobbies and the guest experience, and that's part of it. So every different brand has that sense of identity, some of them very large scale, some of them more intimate and boutique.
So you're investing into making them very sharp in the way you present them. Still, you know, and I pass this question on, that from a consumer perspective, often, and again, you know, we talked about mapping adjectives, and you find the same, like, you know, if I don't have a brand preference, if I'm not a member of a loyalty program, there's a whole world out there for me. Where do I turn?
You can turn. Actually, it's interesting. 1.4 billion people are going to travel this year. They're not all sexy and cool. 1.4 billion people, right? So it's not just about lifestyle, it's not just about, you can turn, actually there's more choice today than any other time in history of hospitality or beers or wines from what we saw. I love that. Yep. I love to be connected with beers and wines, to be honest. So there's more beers, more wine, more hotel brands today to choose from than any other time in the history of mankind. And there must be a reason for it. Because if there wasn't a reason for it, we wouldn't exist. So I hear all that about, do we have more brands? Do we need all these brands? How the consumers make choice? I think the consumers actually find a way to make choice. Because today, either being social media, either being the information that we get every single day, the consumers have 5 seconds, literally 5 seconds to make a choice today. So when I go out with my daughters, and I have to wait for 10 minutes before we eat because they have to take pictures to put on social media on every single plate that comes, and I'm already starving. That tells you that social media and the way consumers make choices today is completely different to what it was 10, 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. Today, 1.4 billion Chinese, they book on WeChat. Just on WeChat. They book hotels on WeChat. We've got 150 million Indian consumers, young consumers that are gonna fly all over the world. How are we gonna address these consumers? They know where to find us as long as we have something that they need.
But I want to push back a little bit on this, because yes, we can always talk about the changes that are happening and consumers changing, all agreed, but a lot of fundamentals stay the same. So locations, price, things like that. And the other part is a lot about distribution, right? How do you make sure that you're in front of that when that purchase decision comes? And I think this is where brands have a lot of power, but you also see the rise of a lot of other sources, OTAs in that sense, that take over. So I think that the choices of how people make choices hasn't fundamentally. The outlets are there.
And I'll tell you one.
Without derailing the conversation.
No, I tell you what. Jeff Bezos said something. I was really intrigued what he said recently. He said, everywhere I go, I get asked what is going to change in 10 years. But nobody is asking me what will not change.
Yes.
Amazon customers, they want 2 things. They want it now and cheap. Correct? And I want it now.
Yeah.
Before I even think what I want it. That's what Amazon Prime does. Before I know what I want. So if we, as an industry, stick to the fundamentals of why people are using our products, everything else, the whole ecosystem that we build around that, is just an add-on. Stay on the fundamentals, the location, the price, the choice, the good bed, the clean shower.
But doesn't this take away your argument that you should, like, if it's just about clean beds and location and price, then brand is completely irrelevant?
No. You know why they're irrelevant? Because there are so many million types of consumers out there. We didn't anticipate that. The consumers have actually changed. Look at the cars. You said that there's only 8 cars, 8 brands in the cars. Have you been in a BMW showroom recently? There are at least 10 X1s, 5 X5s, electric, hybrid, plug-in. You're like, what is all this?
Let me turn that question around and just ask it, because the fact that there's channels that are influencing the consumer a lot. Let me turn that around, saying, is brand also a tool for you to steer your channels, to make an active choice as to where brands are going and where you're reaching your customers?
I would say definitely, and I think so we'll both share on this one too. I think we have certain brands, of course, that will draw consumers in, like with their own brand awareness already in key markets. And of course, a brand presence is not the same in every market. The Ibis brand, for example, in France is a household name. It's not exactly that in some other markets where we're still developing it. So the way consumers find us will be different based on different markets and the way we bring them into our ecosystem. Now, we have built, like all of us, within us, we all have our loyalty platforms that are our booking platforms. We're those who get to know us, and that's why the loyalty programs are so important to be part of that distribution channel, because once they know us in one brand, we bring them in, and then we display all of our beautiful brands all together, which is part of it. Now, when you have a consumer that doesn't know us yet, and I say yet, because they will eventually as they travel, that we will bring them in through other portals of our distribution reach. So the OTAs are an incredibly important partner to us in bringing reach in places where our brand recognition is not already pre-established. And so they give us that distribution network where they bring us in, and then we have the guest and the stay, and then we bring in the loyalty program through our Wi-Fi connection, for example. They come into our ecosystem, they come back to a repeat stay, ideally through our app. So there is a connection in that whole customer journey that we continue to foster and develop.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and maybe as they're also giving us a signal that we're at time here.
I was just going to say, in our case, we are structuring with this in mind, so that creating teams that who understand those individual consumers and their consumer journey intently, that may know how to deliver against those different channels for different consumers and speak to them and receive what we know of those consumers as well. So we are delivering more types of experiences than ever before. Hyatt, for decades, the primary guest was a business traveler. Now we have people from all walks of life traveling for multiple reasons that they didn't before. And so we have to cater and deliver to them, and we're structured in a way to know that we need to create very fine-tuned, granular experiences on property that delivers to those people that we know within that segment.
And maybe, Dimitris, we're probably not going to get the time to...
Yes.
I have one sort of closing question, because we talked about increasing brand portfolio. Now, there's also brand life cycles. When are you actually deciding to take a brand off your portfolio? Is that happening? And if so, when does that happen?
We haven't made that decision yet, so...
I haven't been able to find any brand that's been from a multiple brand chain that has been sunsetted yet, but
And
what I will say, though, is we do more focus on the brand delivery. So what we do have are programs where if we do have hotels that the experience is not matching the brand promise, we work with them. We have a program at Accor called Pure, where we work with those owners to ensure that we are either reinvesting in whatever it takes to elevate the brand to the brand standards, whether that's investment in the property itself, in training, in service delivery. So if they're able to elevate that, then we celebrate that, and they come back onto the brand standard list. If they do not, then we are actively removing those hotels from our portfolio. So that is where we focus, is making sure that our portfolios represent the brand promise that we are communicating to the consumer.
And for us, I mean, just if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So if you don't bring business ideas, brands, and concepts that they don't sit you at the table, you eventually end up at the menu, and that's not a good place to be. So that's why we keep on having the brands that we have.
I think we could keep on discussing for another, I don't know, day or so, and we could probably have a very controversial discussion, but I think we covered a few really interesting points today. Thanks for being so open in this discussion, and thanks for sharing all the different aspects. So,
thank you.
Thanks for having me here.